It's been pretty consistent with Julian Hill getting the most snaps of tight ends pretty much most every game. What's led to that this year, that shift in playing time toward him?
I think a lot of it was in training camp. A lot of things he was doing really well, and he's a young player. Still, as we see it, ascending. And I know with him right now, he's very conscious of certain areas he needs to improve on. And those are things last week, that we really worked on, and we saw improvement. So the big thing that we love about Julian is his focus, how important this is to him, and being an inline blocker isn't easy in the NFL. You know what I mean? So just with us, it goes as a culmination of things, and we're looking to build upon what we did well last week and continue it into this week for Cindy.
What was the difference that you saw in the run game efficiency against the Patriots? Was it opponent-based, or was it more execution?
It was a little bit of both. So we saw with the attack that we were able to do some things that I think would allow us collectively to really focus on a couple areas of our fundamentals and really attack that part of the game plan. And a credit to the guys, they really worked on it during the week with their fundamentals and how they're going to do it. And especially a division opponent on the road and where we're at, it was an area that we thought, hey, if we do this, we can really shift the attack, into all things with the run game. You always want as an offense to be balanced in your attack, and then the way the game goes, you might run a little bit more, throw a little more the way it goes back and forth. So really everything went into what we kind of thought they were going to play, how we were going to focus between the core blockers, the backs, the receivers, how it was all going to be connected. And, I think it was really a credit to the guys of their execution allowed us to be really effective in the run game versus New England.
How big was it to get Johnny Smith one ball last game?
It was great because once he gets the ball in his hands, he's very much effective down the field. So I think that's just something as we were looking at ourselves, and especially over the bye week, areas that we can really improve and help ourselves. And it's just making sure that overall utilizing all of our guys to be involved in the passing game and utilizing all of our guys in different areas of the run game as well in different capacities.
Frank, a question about OBJ. We hear different players, quarterbacks and receivers, talk about how intricate this offense is, the shifts, the motions, the timing. How is it realistic that a veteran such as OBJ can be an immediate impact guy, or do you kind of phase him in a little bit?
I mean, it's kind of what are you looking to do, and then when you're looking at the defense, what areas can your personnel lead you to advantages in matchups and advantages in run games. So I don't think you necessarily go, okay, you assume he's going to be able to take it all in at once. I mean, that's not fair to anyone. So I think ultimately we look at it of, all right, who's the defense? How are we going to attack them? All right, with our deployment of the people, what's the best way to work matchups? And I think that's kind of overall what we always try to go with. So each week is different, but the more you're here, the more you get involved, the more things you can pick up on all the things that, guys who've been here for 3 years know. But I think each week we look at ways to attack the defense and we use our people. So we're excited to continue his growth in this next week.
We saw what an improvement it could be for Snoop going from start 1 to start 2 with a week. How much did this bye week and 2 weeks now before his next start help all you guys get him prepared?
I think it was really good for everyone, not alone him. It does the familiarity with certain things with how guys play live and the communication he's having as he's working with the guys. But I think, when the season doesn't start out the way you were anticipating, what do? You can either go into, panic or disarray, or you really focus on, okay, what have we done well and how do we really build upon that and then work and utilize our guys to get better. So I think that was really what last week allowed us to do, is to really focus on ourselves, Snoop included. But I think really for us, it was getting back to some basic principles and making sure we execute them better. And then that's the challenge now this week. What did we learn from last week? Areas we've grown, and now being able to do it again on the road up in Indianapolis.
Cool. Provided that Devon can play on Sunday, I believe it'd be the first time you have him, Raheem, and Jalen active since the opener when Raheem got hurt and exited that game. What would the impact be on the offense of having all three of those backs available for you guys?
It'd be great. I mean, guys are going through their process to return to the game, so I mean, we follow medical for all that. But I mean, ultimately, when we get back to full health someday with our guys, I mean, it'll be a fun opportunity to really use our personnel to attack the defense in different ways.
Frank, a question about Indy. Quentin Nelson, impactful player. What can a guard do for a team, and what does he do for that offense?
You know, it's guards in general. I mean, they help you control the front edge of the pocket, obviously in the passing game. Obviously, they're point of attack blockers in the run game. Whatever scheme you utilize, obviously there's a different emphasis to the way they impact the blocking. My time in New Orleans, we had Carl Nix and Jari Evans, who at the time were about as good as it gets. And we were heavy inside zone and gap schemes because of the way they could displace the line of scrimmage and the way they could set the front edge of the pocket for Drew. We built from there. So I think it's ultimately, who do you have, what do they do well, and how are you going to utilize your people? So with what they do, obviously he's a very good player for their system. And ultimately, I think it's when you're building a line, you're always looking at, the matchups and how you can do different schemes. And for us, we do a bunch of variations of different things that allow our guys to be in positions to be successful.
Colts own the second worst run defense in the league. Without giving up too much of the game plan, how important will that running back room be on Sunday?
I think it's, when you look at all defenses, whether it's statistically they're doing some, statistically it says they're poor or they're doing something well. I think it ultimately comes down to the backs being connected with the linemen and understanding how we're trying to attack the defense through different schemes. Being connected to the blocking allows them to be able to know where they can anticipate through their aiming points where the reads will be. So I think just whenever you're facing any defense in the league, because every week is challenging in its own right. Even if someone statistically isn't doing well, it's the challenge of the execution to make sure we're all connected. Because ultimately, you don't want the running backs have to do it all on their own. Where it's guys are unblocked, they're just making people miss. It's you want to make sure that everyone's in phase. That way, we're able to connect and hit the pockets of the defense that we're anticipating.
To that point, has the thought of incorporating Snoop into designed runs been brought up at all over the bye week, having an extra week for this game?
Yeah, we've waited, each week, and it's just going, for us, it's more of what is the defense, how do they try and defend the run? Okay, where's the areas you can create advantages for yourself? So it's normally each week it's, all right, where are the areas that we think we can get a matchup or we can get an angle or something to that extent? So, each week we evaluate it, and, it's basically always comes down to what does the defense present and how can we challenge them, when we're deciding which stuff to do.
With Dan, backup quarterback.
Yep.
Flacco.
Skyler, sorry. I wasn't sure what he was talking about. Skyler's getting back from the rib injury. How much has he shown you, and are you feel comfortable with him being the number 2 quarterback?
Just be glad our third quarterback isn't Kyler or something like that. That'll be just a complete mess. So what was that?
With Skyler, how comfortable are you guys with him now throwing the football and moving around in the pocket based on what you've seen in practice recently?
Yeah, he's still working with working himself all the way back to feeling comfortable. So, ultimately, with Skyler, being here for so long, once he's, returning and everything's and feeling completely ready to go, obviously we know what he brings. So I think ultimately for us, it's just making sure that, when guys go through their process to return to play, is making sure that we're all clear, everything's good, and then we can get them back to, doing what we do. Because ultimately for us offensively, it's you want to do what guys do best, and you play to their play strengths, and then ultimately we have our offensive system when we go. So each quarterback really provides Snoop has different skill set that he provides than Skylar, but I think ultimately, his ability to throw the football and play in the pocket and also move with the feet. I mean, we feel very confident when, we need him to play, he'll be ready to go.
So is Tim Boyle, he'll be the backup this week?
I mean, it's today. We're still with the process through the rest of the week. We just make sure we're figuring that out before we set everything in stone, for Sunday.
Well, Tua still has to become eligible to return to practice and go through the final stages of protocol. How quickly do you feel that could happen for him just to get back into the offense and back into the swing of things to be able to start again if he were to be cleared quickly once he's eligible?
I think whenever he's cleared to return to play, we'll just see how that process plays out. But I mean, the way he is, I'm sure it'll be, nose to the grindstone. Here we go, and making sure that he can be ready to go for whatever the timeline is. But I mean, he's been, great in the process and return to play, just his energy. So, whenever that happens, we'll make sure that we do the right things and his return to play is all handled appropriately.
Frank, I know you guys don't want to make excuses. I'm not asking you to. But from a coaching challenge standpoint, you've gone from Tua to Skylar to Snoop, Tim Boyle in there. How difficult has that been on this coaching staff? But this staff, has this been the biggest offensive challenge that you've faced?
I don't know if for me, no. I mean, I remember back in 2016 Chicago when Jay Cutler, Brian Hoyer, Matt Barkley. I mean, we went through a whole. That was a very much challenge in itself, and that was a very tough year. This one, it's when you're dealing with the variance of guys at the quarterback position, it's just making sure that we have a plan built that they understand and can execute and communicate. So. It's weird, like as a coach, sometimes you embrace the challenges and you love the challenges because it's like it's all problem solving. So sometimes you enjoy the challenge of each week and the variables that it plays out, and other weeks you wish that they didn't occur. So it's kind of that, like you're like, yes, here comes the challenge. You're like, oh gosh, I wish it wasn't as hard this week. But I think it all comes down to the guys we've had and the way they go about their process, and that's what makes it easier for us because we know how diligent they are and how ready to go they are.
So, do you think Javon's going to be able to play with the club on his hand Sunday, or is it just expecting too much at that position to play with that limitation?
Yeah, we're certainly hopeful as a staff. I think with that kid, I'm not saying he can't do anything. So if I was going to count on anybody to get out there and play, it would be him. But we're preparing for both situations.
In regards to when you have a safety with something on their hand, do you look at them as, hey, the opposition might go after them just because they have some limitations?
Well, unfortunately, we've had 3. So I think our safeties are taking like boxing classes in their off time or something like that. But we've had a situation with Poyer. He did something to his hand in training camp, as well as Marcus May. And both those guys to this point have played excellent when they've been out there. So regardless of whether he has something on his hand or not, I think he'll be able to go out there and do his job.
We have a question about your defensive success. You got 9 sacks and you've allowed teams to rush for over 100 yards each game, but you're number 5 in the league in defense. Why are you number 5? Why have you had that success?
Yeah, the run defensive numbers, obviously, we got to improve there. That's certainly a thorn in our side at this point. It's particularly the explosive plays that have hurt us in the run game. In terms of our success, I think a lot of that has been our pass defense, and then just guys collectively starting to grasp big picture-wise what we're trying to accomplish. I think as long as we don't, give up those explosives and let the ball go over our head in the pass game, we have the guys that are going to make plays if we force offenses to try to matriculate the ball down the field, which nobody wants to do, particularly this team we're going to play this week.
What about red zone defense?
Yeah.
Those numbers aren't that flattering. Is that just a byproduct of the run struggles, or?
I don't think so. Some of those numbers just situational. We've been put in bad spots, right? We've had a couple PIs where they've gotten the ball on the 1. Those obviously kill your red zone numbers. We had a couple that long third downs that were converted where, good throw, good catch. Hats off to them. I was encouraged by the last game where we went 0 for 2, and that'll help. So hopefully that's a sign of things to come. And like I said, I think it's just a matter of finishing, particularly when they get down there.
What challenges does Anthony Richardson pose?
I mean, you've seen him. He's back there when he pulls the ball down to run. I mean, he looks like John Riggins, right? He's enormous. He's big. He runs through people, and then he has a hose for an arm. So I mean, the throw he made against Houston, which was like 70 yards in the air or something, falling backwards, is incredible. So just his skill set, his physical attributes. He is certainly still maturing as a player, but I think his ceiling is incredibly high.
Kind of piggybacking off those last two questions, their splits in the red zone for the Colts are much better with Richardson in the game. I'm curious what a quarterback with his running ability does to make the challenge even more difficult in the red area.
Yeah, it's a nightmare, right? Because essentially they always have an extra hat for you when you use him as a runner. I've lived through that. I got to watch that from my own sideline with Lamar for the last 3 years. So the thing we try to stress to the guys that even when it's empty, you got to play it like Wildcat, because he can certainly pull the ball down, and they can do a bunch of scheme runs in that situation. So it certainly provides issues for a defense. You find certain ways to try to attack them and still not leave your DBs vulnerable, and we'll try to do just that.
What difference does Jonathan Taylor's presence make to their offense and to your defense?
Yeah, I think that kid is an absolute stud. When I watch him, he reminds me a little bit of Fred Taylor in the sense that he has some patience and vision. He's a guy that he's going to dip in and out of holes, Le'Veon Bell type back, and then still has a speed to get away from guys. So if he doesn't play, it certainly doesn't hurt us. If he does play, you always want to play against the best, and I consider him one of those.
You've been getting some good playing, some good minute snaps from Deshaun Hand. What has he shown you probably since the beginning of when you got here to where he is now?
Yeah, I mean, Deshaun, and you look at him, he's strong as an ox. And every day he's in this building, he just works. He's not an excuse maker. He's not a guy that goes out and makes the same mistake multiple times. He's just constantly trying to get a little bit better each day, which is all we ask of every single player on the team. So I'm happy with where he's at. I'm happy he stayed healthy throughout, and knock on wood, he's out there for all 17 for us.
How much more can you get out of Bowser now that he's been with the team for a bit, as opposed to just arriving on Thursday morning and go play 30 snaps on Sunday?
Yeah, a lot. Tyus is obviously a guy I have history with, and unfortunately, he missed last season with dealing with some things with his knee. I think Tyus is a tremendous football player. I still think he's kind of working himself into where he was prior to injury, but he's extremely knowledgeable from a scheme standpoint. He can play multiple positions. So just when you're able to acquire somebody that familiar with what you're doing, particularly at this point in the season, that's huge for a defense, because you don't have to limit yourself when he's in the game. So I think the sky's the limit for him. As he gets more confident in where he's at with his body, I think you're just going to see more production from him.
Was his name one that came up? Did Chris Greer ask you about him earlier this offseason, obviously with your background with him? And what physical skill does he have that makes him effective?
Yeah, I've been keeping an eye on Tyus for a while, because when I first got here, he still wasn't cleared to play. So we were just kind of keeping an eye on him and where he was from a health standpoint, just because I knew he would be a seamless add to the defense. And the other thing that happens, and I saw it, you saw way back in like 08, 09 when Rex went to the Jets and he brought Bart Scott and Jimmy Leonard with him to the Jets. So you have guys that are scheme familiar that are able now to help you teach the other guys some of the intricacies of what you're trying to get done. So in terms of his ability and his flexibility, I mean, he can play Sam backer. He's a guy that's had 9.5, almost 10 sacks, I believe, when I was with him in 2021. So you can rush him from multiple spots on the edge, inside. He can drop and knows every drop with details. So just adds a tremendous value for us.
Going back to Jonathan Taylor and Anthony Richardson, what kind of, I guess, added layer of stress is there late in the game having to account for a running back and a running quarterback? I know the Ravens come to mind with how they use Derrick Henry late in the game, where he kind of just able to take over a game late in those situations.
Yeah, right. Always an issue, particularly in close games. And the things where they really stress you is when they're particularly in plus territory. it's 4 down for them, right? So that normal situation when it's 3rd and 5, 3rd and 6, where typically you're thinking, all right, let's go hunt and let's get after the passer. You're playing those as more 50-50 situations now. So to me, that's probably the biggest stress in it all, is that your typical predictable pass downs don't play like that when you have those guys.
Have you been finding noticeable growth in Chop Robinson through his first 5 weeks?
I thought his last game was his best game to date. You talk about setting the edge, falling back, playing gap and a half, impacting the passer, which we obviously expected and know that he can do. I'm pleased with his trajectory and how he's grown so far this season. I know the sack hasn't been there yet, but he's close. And like I tell all rushers, like they come in bunches, right? Like as soon as you get that first one, they usually get a bunch of them back to back. So looking forward to that kid's career as he pushes forward.
What stands out in the self-scouting you did during the bye week for your defense?
Yeah, the biggest one I think was just the explosive run numbers. If you take the biggest explosive run out of each game, we're like top 5 in run defense in yards per carry now. Unfortunately, can't do that. Okay, we have to get that fixed. But I don't think it's going to require wholesale changes. Pleased, obviously, with what we're doing on 3rd down, but knowing that you got to continue to spin the dial and keep offenses unbalanced. So just trying to make sure we're not doing anything that's going to come off as predictable when somebody is studying us.
Are you optimistic about having Agba on Sunday?
I am. I mean, you see the guy. He's tough. He was out there through individual yesterday. I know he's nursing an injury, but just like I said about Javon, I'm not counting that kid out.
We've a question about Quentin Nelson. You know, we look at Anthony Richardson, Joe Flacco, Jonathan Taylor, Michael Pittman. He might be the best player on their team, Quentin Nelson. What can a guard do for them? What can he do for Anthony Richardson? What can he do for Jonathan Taylor?
Well, first off, he went to an excellent university. I mean, let's start there. I mean, arguably the best in the country. But no. I mean, I think the kid is an absolute stud. Me, particularly as a defensive line guy by nature, I don't have the most love for offensive linemen. He is one that I do because he plays the game from an offense perspective like a defensive lineman. He plays nasty. He's trying to finish everything. And to me, he's kind of the tone setter for their offense. So when you have that guy, particularly when he's a big, right in the middle, he's kind of your enforcer and your intimidator, and guys tend to follow that guy.
Coach, when we first talked with you back in February, whatever that was, you raved about Ramsey's flexibility. Yeah. I'm curious, 5 games in, 6 weeks into the season, how you've seen that play out on Sundays.
Yeah, as expected. I don't think there's a position on the football field he hasn't played. Right, you blitz him sometimes, and like a Sam backer. We've put him all over the place. We've blitzed him from the corner position. You know, we're almost ready to put him at inside backer just to try to mess with some of these offensive guys. But you know, just love the kid and just the intensity he brings to the game, his competitiveness, and then just his overall football IQ allows him to play all those spots seamlessly. Really, to me, it's incredibly admirable what he and Cater Kohu as well. I don't want him to get kind of lost in all this because when Jalen does move, that requires somebody else to know the job too. And Cater's been great, just seamlessly moving those guys around. And offense is like trotting the same people out there, and when they don't know where they're going to be, that's a problem.
I wanted to ask you, obviously you guys are having tremendous success on 3rd downs. Credit to you. But where would you want to have success as defense? I know sack production, turnovers, red zone defense, 3rd down defense. Obviously, those are all factors that contribute to the outcome. But where do you put the most stock in terms of this defense helps teams win?
Yeah, scoring defense. Right, that's it. I think I'm pretty sure that you win 100% of the games where you score more points than the other team. Pretty sure about that. So we're trying to hold offenses to as little points as possible. All the other stuff is incredibly important, but ultimately I think that's all those measurables are to justify like not allowing offenses to score. So that's what's most important to me, and I love the stats, and it's incredibly important. Obviously, we want to be great on defense, but most importantly, we want to win games. That's the most important stat. And there's going to be certain games that are required to win a certain way, and whatever way that is, we'll try to play that way and get it done.
I know takeaways are always emphasized, but when you have a quarterback in Richardson who's tied for second most interceptions, what do you tell your defensive backfield?
Nothing different than how we approach any other week, right? We're always striving for takeaways. Coach Barry just had a great meeting about takeaways and turnovers, both trying to preach to the offense and holding the ball, and for us punching it, strip sack, and doing everything we can to try to get that ball away. Because when we win that differential, your percentages of winning go way up. And just like I said, ultimately that is the goal: win the football game.
We saw Jalen Phillips post that he had successful surgery. What's the approach he has taken through all this, where a lot of guys could be down over it, but it seems like he's positive.
I mean, just what an incredible individual, right? The adversity that he was hit with, a lesser man, lesser person, you could see crumbling, right, or going through a state of depression. He has not done that, right? He's faced it head on, which you would hope, particularly in this profession that we're in, that's what you do, right? You don't. After a storm comes the rain, right? And this is a storm for him, and I know he's gonna push through this and be the guy we expect him to be.
So to get this thing started, Danny, the punt that was blocked, was that? It looked like they had overloaded that side, and then maybe you guys, the blocking got off. Was that them or was that you guys?
It was a combination. It's the same rush that they worked later in the game. Just slightly off on technique, and you can't be slightly off on technique versus good players. So that's probably their best player, and he did a hell of a job with his effort and leaned and bent the corner and was able to get a hand on the football. But again, if your technique is off a little bit, some bad things can happen, especially against good players.
Quentin Bell looked like he got in on a couple of field goal attempts on the kicker's left side. What have you seen from him, and what did you see without getting too specific on those plays? What did you guys do right?
Well, I think we're doing a good job with that unit overall, and we're it's the old adage, you're close, but it doesn't matter. But we've done a good job on that team. We've had a couple guys get close, and I think as that happens, some of the emphasis goes in certain directions, which creates maybe some opportunities for some other players. And I think Q did a good job, was ready to answer the bell, and when those opportunities came for him, did a good job. We just again clean up those little bitty things, which can be the difference between getting a hand on it and not getting a hand on it.
Kicking in domes. Obviously no wind, but kicking off turf, is that better than kicking off natural grass? How do you view that?
It can vary based on the stadium, what type of turf it is. Some turfs, I was in Buffalo for 6 years and now I've played there for 6 more years. That turf has a tendency to get slippery because it's, built into the ground with cement. So that gets a little bit slippery. Other ones not as much. So the good thing for us is, the kickers spend a lot of time in our indoors. So they kick off turf, they warm up on turf. So it won't be that big of a transition.
After a week where you had so many special teams mistakes, the botched snap, the blocked field goal or blocked punt, missed field goal, what are special teams meetings like with coordinator Danny Crossman with those guys?
They're the same. There's always going to be issues. Some of those things can't. The snap issue is something that, I've been around this thing for a long time. That's the third time that a group that I've been involved with has had that happen. So you're going back to, when I'm 12 years old. So those things can't happen, but they do. It's you see it around the league. It doesn't happen a lot, but but those things can't happen. We missed a field goal. We banged it off the upright, which is our nemesis, as you guys know. And then we have a little breakdown with the technique. So those are things that we got to get cleaned up, and they can get cleaned up. But we also steal a possession by quick counting them and getting 12 guys on the field. So it's a turnover. We get a possession. We do a good job freaking on punt return twice, doing a good job with the returner and the vice players on their gunners to get touchbacks against good players. So there's good things. I like a lot of things we're doing in the play. We're just doing too many things that we have to do better before the play or at the end of the play. We had another penalty last week. We got to eliminate the penalties. We've talked about that in here. So the things that, in my opinion, that we can control, that's what we have to do a better job of. They're good players. We're going to play good players. There's going to be plays made. I can live with some of those things. What the hard thing is living with the pre-snap, the post-snap, and the things that you can control. If you can control it, we got to do a better job of it.
All those things I mentioned occurred in the first half. Was there anything said at halftime to get guys right?
A lot of the same thing. I'm to answer your previous. I'm harder during the week. On game day, game day is game day. They don't. They know when they mess up. Those things. There's technique stuff that we'll talk about, schematic stuff that we'll spend a lot of time talking about. But when guys mess up, they know they mess up. They don't need me reminding them. They know that. Blake knows he had a poor snap. Jason knows he missed the field goal. Okay, what did we see from a technique standpoint that we can correct, and let's move on for that. Now, stuff happens in practice. I get a little bit more upset because, it's private, it's in-house, and nobody needs to see and hear about it. But on Gabe, they don't need to hear that from me. They know. I mean, you guys know when you guys mess something up, you mess something up. Gals, you mess something up, you don't need somebody reminding you. Sadly, we all get reminded, and then then you even get more mad.
Yes.
But that's part of life.
Coach, just trying to expand my football knowledge here a little bit. Are there certain calls in the punt return game where it's automatic fair catch for the return man?
Not necessarily when you go situationally, yes, but overall, no. It may be a case of based on score, time on the clock, trying to not use time, trying to save time, trying to take time off that we're saying no matter what, if you can return it. There's a lot of those situations, but we don't ever go where we're going into a game like, hey, we are going to fair catch. No.
Danny, there's been a couple of incidents recently where guys have jumped over the center, over the line to block kicks. Take me through that from both sides. Do you coach your guys to do that, and what are your interior guys supposed to do?
Yeah, well, that's going to be an interesting thing because technically when that's happening, there's holding. So what's happening is in those situations that's happening, guys are grabbing the guard and grabbing the center and pulling them in a direction to enable that player to jump through. By rule, it is legal if you're at the line of scrimmage, you can leap over as long as no part of your body touches any of the offensive players. You can't touch them on the way over. You can't land on them. Legal. The process of that, using hands to grab and pull people, is something that you'll see the league's looking into because that goes a little bit outside of what is viewed on paper as legal. So, yeah, that's something. It's in everybody's game plan. A lot of time it's based on the technique you see from the field goal team. There's some things that, the field goal team can do to help themselves. But, I think that's something you'll see be talked about here in the near future.
So on the block punt, Duke Riley was on that side, and then the week before, obviously, he almost had the touch. He's one of your more reliable guys generally. So is there any conversations that you feel need to be had with him? Or
You're on one today. Yeah. We believe me, we have conversations all the time. And it's, again, a little bit off on your technique against a very good player, and that's the kind of stuff that happens. But if you guys want to go back and look at it, it's the exact same alignment, outside, wide, 1, 2, 3 that they run later in the game, and you get it protected. But again, technique's a little bit better, and it doesn't happen. So I don't care what it is. Like when you play good players and you're off a little bit, I don't care what position. If you're off a little bit, there's a chance of something negative happening, and it happened to us. Credit to them, and more importantly, credit to the player. He makes a hell of an effort. Leans around the edge, and it's almost like, how the heck did he get a piece of that?
Danny, to spin things forward, what do you see in Indy? Sanchez kicking. What do you see about their specialty?
They're a good group. Matt Gay's was a good pickup for them. They're playing the game aggressively. They got a really good group of core players. They have, that 220, 230-pound group. They got about 6 or 7 guys that all run very well, and then they add the big guys into it. So they got a couple of big bodies that cause you some problems also. But it's a well-coached group. You know, they made a switch with the returner in the punt return game with Downs, and he's done a good job getting the ball up the field. So they'll be ready to play.
So if you exclude Tehran, who's obviously continued to be excellent, who has been your most consistent offensive lineman through 5 games?
Most consistent. That's a great question, because as you look at it, every week, how are you defining that, right? So I mean, I think you guys would probably have a very strong opinion on how you're going to define that. You know, guys applying the technique and fundamentals that we want them to utilize, and so that takes time, right? And getting used to each week. So why I'm telling you all that is because to say who's the most consistent, well, by their level of play, by how we want to do things, by what the defense is presenting, every other guy has had those moments, right? So that's why they're out there, is because they have those moments and they present play that is exuded of what we want represented, and their chemistry of working together to constantly put a product that we think can trend in the right direction each week.
So Brewer.
How has he played? Speaking of your center, obviously he had a transition from a very good player to another good player. Has he fulfilled expectations?
Yeah, each week he continues to focus on the things that he needs to do to get better, and he's emphasized those things. He has taken things that I think sometimes people viewed as something maybe he's not quite as good at, and really emphasize that to get better and focus on the things he needs to do to be at his best, right? And so he's really taken the opportunity to own it and say, this is the starting point as a coach. You're painting the picture of what the starting point is. Here's how we're starting this off, right? They present something that we did not expect, which can happen in every NFL football game every weekend. Okay, they gave us something we weren't anticipating, and based upon the starting point that we give him, he has to adjust it to make the right communication, get everyone on the same page, and now go execute it, right? And
that thing I'm sorry to interrupt you. On the Brewer, I was going to say, the thing you mentioned where people thought he wasn't as good at, obviously pass protection. In your view, Butch, is Aaron Brewer now an above average pass protector?
He's trending in the direction that I want him to go, absolutely. He's doing a lot of really good things. I want him to keep building on it.
Butch, the 41 carries for 193 yards. What was the role of the offensive line in that?
Do our job. I mean, at the end of the day, right? And so every time that you have a play on the field, okay, run pass, and you're asking a run question, I get it. But every time you have a play on the field, we have to have 11 guys in concert, right? And so I have to make sure 5 guys are in concert every play, right? And so we have to be connected with the 5, but then we got to tie to the receivers and how they're going to block it, to how the running back's track is going to fit, to how the tight end is going to block it, and we all got to be in concert, right? And so I think that is something, obviously, that week was something that started to get put together on a more consistent basis that allowed us to have more opportunities at those carries, if that makes sense.
You recently got a start from Patrick Paul as a rookie. What was your assessment of that game?
It was a great experience for him. I think that every week, again, he's a guy that it's a process, it's a growth that is huge every opportunity that he gets, right? So I think that he went out there, he battled. Obviously, every player on the field has plays that they want to get better at. Every player has plays that they wish could be better than what they were in that point. But the key is, are we learning from it? And if we're learning from it, now we take even bigger steps each week. And so I thought there was a lot of growth that was made in that process.
I wanted to ask you about the outside zone stuff.
Mm-hmm.
You all haven't had as much success with it this year as you've had in last year. Is that a personnel situation, or is that just a matter of it hasn't happened for us yet because of the situation?
Yeah, well, I think it did happen in the New England game. There's a lot of forms of outside zone, right? So I think what you're referring to is last year we were all the way to the edge outside. Well, every week there's a lot of factors, right? And so there's part of what I talked about is all of us being connected all the time, okay? But then there's also what's the defense looking at? What are they saying? Hey, how are we going to defend them? And then us saying this is our plan of attack. Then how are we going to adjust? Or how we set everything from the beginning, right? To attack them. And so there's a lot of factors in that to say, oh man, we can be really good with this versus that because of what they're defending, right? And so there's a lot of things there. I think there was a lot of really good outside zone runs in the New England game that may have hit downhill. Well, we can't control that because of how we set up our running back and how we set up the run game in terms of how he is formatted to look at the defense and adjust the runs based upon how we're blocking it and what's presented in front of them, right? But it's still an outside zone play, if that makes sense.
It does make sense. So are teams playing you guys differently to try to take that outside away?
I think that absolutely. That doesn't mean that's the only thing they're doing, but I think there's a part of it.
About the concert of the offensive line being in unison as five. When you incorporate the running back and talking about those tracks and reading the angles of those blocks, what is your guys' involvement with that running back room from a personnel standpoint and coach's standpoint to make sure you guys are on the same page as an offensive line with the running backs?
Yeah, I mean, I think every day we have a meeting that's involved in the run game, right? And so we're talking about this is how we want to attack the defense. This is how we're attacking them with our blocks and our aiming points and trying to match everything to make it look that we're together, right? And so if we're running on the same angles as they are, now we can start to be in concert, and now how they read it is a lot easier, and it flows for them to know how they want to make their upcuts and how or where they want to take the ball in that instance.
So it starts with the offensive line and they adjust to you guys.
Well, it's both. It's both. Depending on what we're trying to do, we may adjust some things where we have to do things a little bit differently because we're going to say this track is going to be more downhill. This track's going to be more outside, right? So we have to adjust based upon that track also. So it's give and take on both sides of it.
Which has the quality of play you've gotten from your starting guards, Jones and Eichenberg, been up to your standards?
I think that they keep progressing in a really good direction every week. And again, there's a lot of things that get pieced together, like we just talked about with everyone and how we want the run game to look, how we want the protection plan to look, where we want the quarterback to be, what we're looking at, everything to be, and how we want to set it all up from a launch point, all that. So, yeah, they are trending in a really good direction. Absolutely. Are there plays that all of us wish were better or we want back to be in a better situation? Yeah, that's every team, that's every player that I've ever been a part of. But they are doing things in a fashion. They have versatility. They have multiplicity. They are doing things in a fashion. They work together. I mean, there are so many things that have to meet the standard that you're referencing that they do achieve, and that's why we like having them in the room.
Teron said before the bye week that the run game has to be a staple for you guys going forward. What has been your message to the offensive line group, especially going up against a team that's, I think, ranked second in terms of run defense?
Second to last, excuse me.
Yeah, I mean, it's all about. I mean, yes, we 100% are very clued into how they're going to line up, their stances, how they're going to approach blocks that are getting them, how the backers are going to fit relative to the runs we're probably going to design. Right, we're locked in that. But at the end of the day, now it's about what we do and how we approach the block and the consistency that we're constantly working for and the standard that we're looking for in that approach on every play, right? And so 100% what he's saying is consistency to that standard to our approach every day to approach to our practice, how we go about practice every day and how we're trying to strive to continuously get better and, yes, be a staple.
Butch, I think somebody told us earlier today that you gave a presentation on turnovers. Is that?
No.
Barry, that was Barry.
It's my brother.
Oh, okay. All right.
Oh, it was Joe Barry.
Oh, it's okay.
Yeah.
All right. I didn't know.
Definitely not me.
All right. All right.
No relation. No relation.
Well, you guys can leave it up for your interpretation on that.
You guys good? One more thing, that Aaron Brewer has had a couple of snaps that dribbled back. Was that cadence, or he thought he heard can you tell me what those have been? It's been different games, obviously.
Yeah, just just a miscommunication that happened in the situation I think you were referencing is New England. There was a miscommunication there, so but moving forward from that point on, he got it cleared up, and I feel like we're in a good position with everything.
One final thing. I've asked a couple of guys about the run game success, and they've said techniques and fundamentals. How big a factor has that actually been, as opposed to individuals just doing their jobs?
It's all a huge factor. I mean, it's everything that we try to emphasize, everything we're trying to do. So every day, that's the emphasis, right? Like I said, we very aware of how they're going to fit things and how they're going to play the structure of their scheme on every opponent that we play. But at the end of the day, now it's about us and our approach every single day, and how we're going to attack the line of scrimmage, how we're going to attack the defender, and then stay connected to the defender on every play. So that's something that we continuously work on and harp all the time.
Obviously, you've been here since 2022, so you've been here since Cater's outstanding rookie year, seemingly a bit of a regression. Last year, he's back to playing really well. What has changed for him where he's gotten back more to the guy we saw as a rookie? What did you emphasize to him in meetings when you were promoted this past offseason?
Yeah, I don't think anything's changed in him. I think it's more so just his confidence in being able to play free. Like for me, the biggest thing I talk to him about is don't worry about making a mistake. Just go make a play. Like if you go play fast and it doesn't work out in our favor, at least you played fast. And I think you saw that in the last game on a third down, kind of hesitated on one of the tackles, and then later in the game had the same opportunity, shot, and made the tackle. So that's really with everybody what we emphasize, and I think you just see with Cater, he can change the game. He can do a lot of great things. So when he plays with that confidence, you see who he really is.
I'm doing something on Jalen Ramsey, and it kind of occurs to me that he's been closer to the ball this year. Runs, blitzes, slot. What, at the risk of sounding stupid, what is the advantage of having Jalen Ramsey closer to the ball?
When you watch and you see him closer to the ball, you naturally, I would think, can feel his presence and with the way he can change the game. So I don't think it's a stupid question. But I would ask you that same question. When you watch him around the ball, what do you feel? You feel it. You know what I mean? You see him making impact plays. So it's really that simple. He has the ability to change the game no matter where you put him. So, obviously not talking about future opponents or what we're doing this week, but from what you guys have seen, you've seen him move around and you've seen us try to put him in places to impact the game, and he's done that. So I think it's as simple as that of, wherever he is, he can make an impact. So let's make as much of an impact as we can.
When you look at his aggression, aside from pass coverage, blitzing, TFLs, it seems like he's attacked the run pretty well this year. What does that do for the defense? What does that say about Jalen?
What does that do for the defense? I mean, it's huge. Anytime we can generate negative plays, anytime we can generate some positive momentum within the game, that's huge. So, all those plays that he's making, that all the guys are making, are really helping us progress and move forward throughout the game. So we're playing, or putting the offense behind the sticks where we can be aggressive. For him, I mean, that's who he's been. When he's been his best in his career, that's who he's been, is a guy who's moved around, been around the football, and extremely impactful when he gets there. So I think, all we're trying to do is put everyone we have in what role fits them best to best get their attributes on show, but also for the defense, put us in the best position to have our best players doing their best things.
What does the film show you on their young quarterback, Richardson?
Obviously, extremely, extremely talented. Hard guy to get down. a lot of great arm strength. He can spread the field, and he makes you defend 11 people. You know, that's the power. You see it obviously a lot in college football. So in the NFL, when you get that sparsely week to week, you got to put an emphasis on that 11th guy running the ball. So he's extremely talented. It's been fun watching him. I think he's great for the game, you know, what he can do. So just been game planning and going off that. But yeah, it's been fun to
What have you
get in
seen
there.
in the 2 weeks you've got back from
Yeah,
on the field?
Cam's been awesome. The greatest thing about Cam is just his natural ability to play the position. Like, he is so natural at playing corner. Without any coaching, you could just go put him out there and he'd fly around and make plays and be extremely talented. So for him, it had nothing to do with that. It was just him getting, you know, healthy and ready to go. So he's been the Cam that we brought here and are excited about. So he's been great.
What has he been on show team or?
He's right now, we've been putting him everywhere just so he's getting in football shape. So you know, if you guys are out there, you'll see him all over the place. But it's not. There's no intention one way or another. It's really just getting him back playing football because he's been down for a few weeks.
In what ways do you think he has developed from year one to year two?
Same thing with him is just his confidence in going out and playing with his technique. I think that's a place where me and him have worked really closely, is just taking his technique from what he did to college and putting it to a lot of the receivers he's seeing now in the league and being consistent with that technique. He has a very natural football awareness to his game and to the way he studies and prepares. So in the meeting room, really just trying to help him progress there. And like all veterans do, they get better each year with studying the game and studying opponents. So tried to, you know, just kind of take him and teach him that as we've gone along. So excited, you know, as we move forward throughout his career of seeing that be applied on the field.
Coach, outside of Josh Downs, who's a stud in his own right, I think the Colts entire receiving core is like 6'3" and above. How does that size challenge your guys' room?
I mean, always at the catch point. Obviously, if there's a size advantage one way or another, you know, teams are going to try to use that and exploit that. So for us, it's from a technical standpoint, how do we counteract that if we're not on the positive end of that matchup? But like anything, if there's a positive, there's a negative. And, you know, for us, as we game plan, we try to find, okay, they might have height, they might have this or that, but what can we exploit within how we game plan them? So I don't think we necessarily look at it from that negative lens. We look at it more of the positive lens. Okay, well, this is what they have, but what do we have that can counteract that?
Going back to Cater and Jalen for a second, Anthony Weaver said earlier that the way you guys are able to use Jalen and kind of move him in different areas then frees up Cater to also step up and show what he can do. I guess, what have you seen from that and the versatility you've gotten from Cater and how they kind of feed off of each other?
Yeah, no question. Without Cater being able to do what he can do, doesn't allow Jalen to do, you know, what he's done in his career. So Cater is as big of a part of that as you guys have seen as Jalen, because when you move one guy, someone else has to do another job. You know, so you've seen us be able to stay with the same people on the field and guys doing different jobs and moving that around. So that goes into Jalen's development and Cater's development and the time they put in the offseason and in camp, really to be able to learn the entire playbook from multiple positions and move around. So for both of them, and really for the whole defense, it's not just them, because that affects everybody when we do that. So it's for the whole defense. Everyone's been really bought in. You know, the more we can do, the more we can do. So when guys have bought into really trying to learn the playbook through and through and be able to move around, again, it just allows us to put the guys who can make plays in positions to make plays.
Question about Storm Duck. When he's been out there, from afar, it seems like he's a very aggressive player. He makes tackles. What stands out to you about Storm, or what has stood out?
Yeah, I think that for one, he just has a natural, quiet confidence about his game. Like, he's a tough kid who can be coached really hard, is naturally aggressive, and he's confident, so he's patient. So you see him on the line of scrimmage. He's able to get his hands on guys when he's in press and flatten guys out. And when he's down the field, the thing you look for in corners all the time is how poised are they at the point of attack down the field. Ball's in the air. I mean, go back to preseason, how many plays he made on the ball down the field. He's just naturally poised, has a great confidence to him. And when he came in, you wouldn't even know the same Storm Duck you see now. He's made such a progression from when he first came in as an undrafted guy to where he is now. So he's put in the work, and the confidence is all because he knows he's worked towards it. But you have confidence as a coach in putting him in the game because you know he's going to do the right thing. You know he's going to play really hard, run to the ball, and you know when the ball's in the air, he's probably going to get it back.
Interceptions have been a bit of a problem for Richardson. What have you seen that will allow the corners to grab a few balls from?
Yeah. Without being too specific, there's obviously things each week that you try to find your opportunities, through tendencies where you can try to get the ball back. And you can't spend the whole game trying to do that. Majority of the ones you're going to get are just from playing fast, playing hard, and good things happen, and the rush and the coverage working together. But yeah, there's always things that we look to exploit in places where we can be aggressive because of whatever it is. But in terms of him and getting the ball back, I mean, it's just you see teams fly around, you see teams affect the quarterback, and when that happens, the ball goes up in the air and you got a chance to get it back. So the more we can keep any quarterback off rhythm and be able to be tight in coverage, which allows us to get after the quarterback, good things are going to happen. So it's more general that way, I'd say.
For your guys, what is the difference between facing Anthony Richardson and Joe Flacco?
From a coverage standpoint, I think the first thing you see is just the extension of plays with one guy versus the other. Joe Flacco's obviously been in the league for a while. A lot of the quarterbacks, they get older, they've been in the league, they're smart. Is my stuff down the field there? No, I'm getting the ball out and I'm moving the sticks, So you see that a lot in Joe's game and in the games that he's been in. Then when you have Anthony Richardson, he can run around, move around, extend the play a lot more, and you see him do that. And for a guy who's big and can run, he's looking to get the ball out of his hand when he does extend the play. So just having an emphasis on understanding that when the play breaks down, you got to defend the play, and then you got to defend the play after the play when you have quarterbacks who are extending it. So Flacco obviously had multiple times doing that this year as well. So it's not like it's one or the other, but just more emphasis on that understanding.
Time for a few more guys.
Just wondering, what's it like coaching a guy like Jalen Ramsey, a potential future Hall of Famer?
It's been awesome. Obviously, this is my first position job in the NFL. So to have him, Kendall, Poyer, just the amount of guys who have played this game for a while at a very high level, I try to take as much from them as I possibly can. A lot of our early in the week conversation or like meetings and stuff are conversations, as much as I see something one way, I love to know how they see it. And there's a lot of things where they've broken games down a certain way through their view, how they view it, and they see things and they'll tell me, and then I go study it, and then I give them the information like, yeah, you're right, this is exactly what it is, da-da-da. So I try to use them as much as I can for my own self and my own growth. But it's been a cool experience because we're really all doing it together. And, when we're meeting, I'm trying to give them as much information that's helpful, because if I don't, I'm going to waste their time. They see the game a lot more from a second level perspective than your first, 3 years in the game. So if I just go up there and just da-da-da-da-da, I'm going to waste their time. I'm not going to do that. So it forces me to be a better coach and be more prepared.
It seems the ideal thing is to have good players in their prime and then a young developmental pipeline. You have that at your position, obviously, with Ramsey and Fuller, and then with the young guys with Cam and Storm Duck and Ethan Bonner, Isaiah Johnson. Do you feel good from that perspective about having, and Kohu, about having a pipeline of young guys?
Yeah, it's awesome. I think to your point, for those young guys, the same way I answered your question, for them, they're learning from those older guys the same exact way. So a lot of it is conversational, and in practice and individual, we're all working towards that common goal, but there's coaching points that those guys can give the younger guys that will help them develop their game, and it does. And when we watch film, we break down games, when we're at games, all those conversations are huge. So yes, having those older guys is great. They're extremely productive. They're helping us win. But at the same time, they're helping develop those younger guys that are all great players.